What's going on, everyone? Kenny from Team Moistar here, and today I'm going to be going over my super dope Glimora deck. So Glimora has the ability Shattering Crystal, where when this Pokemon is knocked out, you flip a coin, if heads, your opponent can't take any prize cards for it. So that you can kind of see where the route is going to be with this. Essentially, the whole strategy is to set up your Glimoras over and over and over again, so that you're just consistently able to set them up, poison them with the attack Poison Petals for a single fighting. When your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned during Pokemon checkup, the poison is now 6 instead of 1, and deny your opponent as many prize cards as you possibly can. Now, of course, I got some what makes this kind of work is the Glimmet having Ascension, but I run also Cramorant as a backup attacker against stuff like Snorlax, to where you can actually go through them. We also run 4 Colress, so that we're able to pull that off, along with being able to draw consistently with the engine. The rest of the list is pretty straightforward for a deck like this. We got 1 Manaphy, so you don't just get Greninja turn 1. Radiant Sneasler is the Radiant of choice, and another key card in the deck has the ability Poison Peak. During Pokemon checkup, 2 more damage counters are added to your opponent's poison. So essentially, in between turns, it would go from 6 to 8. In between turns, it'd be 8, 16, 24, and going back into 32. Nothing is surviving that. Even if your opponent stays in the active spot and you just go, okay, Glamora, and then they trigger poison for 2 turns, you can Cramorant them and the poison still knocks them out. So it's very interesting. 4 Nest Ball, 4 Pokégear, 1 copy of Rescue Carrier, 4 copies of the reprinted Super Rod. Thankfully, we got Super Rod back. 3 copies of Dynasty Heal, which is a card that's kind of seen fringe play in the meta, but Pokemon, both yours and your opponent, can't be healed, so it essentially stops off like your regenerative energy and Cheryl from completely just getting rid of your built-up damage, because this isn't a deck you take prize cards quickly. It's a deck where you deny your opponent and you just take them out slowly. Then we have 4 copies of Arezu. You search your deck for up to 3 evolution Pokemon that don't have rule blocks, and you put them into your hand. This is simply because we have a little bit more outs of finding basic Pokemon such as Glimmet due to Rescue Carrier, 4 Nest Ball, and 4 Glimmet, but we barely have any ways of finding Glamora outside of drawing them, so we have 4 copies of Arezu. If you wanted to experiment with it, you could probably try 3 Arezu, 3 Clavell, or 2 Clavell to Arezu, depending on how it ends up rolling with it. But as of right now, that's what it is with the Arezu. Then we got 3 Boss, 3 copies of Bruno, 4 copies of Colress, 4 copies of Iono, one of the best cards in the format, probably ever printed. And then 10 Fighting Energies were consistently able to attack. So let's see this deck in action.
Alright, so we open up Cramorant, which isn't our best starter, seeing how it is a late game pivot. And the rest of our hand is clunked with supporter cards and no way to find other Glimmets, but we did open up the Boost Shake, which allowed us to instantly evolve into Glamora. Now, seeing how we're sitting across from Lost Box, this is kind of awkward, seeing how we want more Glimmets, but it's alright. Our opponent attaches a Jet Energy to the Comfy to bring it up in the active, uses the ability, and then passes. Here we go, Chorus Experiment. I'm debating between a couple cards, but I end up saying, you know what, the Rod and Cram are more important in a matchup like this, where I need to respond, knock out other Crams. And I keep Iono, Super Rod, and a Pokégear, so I could potentially hit another supporter card along the lines. Our opponent goes with a Flower Select and gets rid of the Forest Seal Stone, and then ends up benching another Comfy, retreating, and using Flower Selecting again. Really peculiar how they have not found a supporter card for the turn, because it is now turn 2, almost going into turn 3 on theirs. And they're not going to have anything. And that course is pretty easy. Allowed us to get double Nest Ball and Arezu. So during the next turn, we're going to be able to use Arezu to grab 2 more Glamoras. And from here, I use Spit Innocently to take the knockout on the Comfy. From here, they only have access to 1 more as of right now. So this means their draws are cut even more, seeing how they haven't even hit a Colress yet. They go into a Cram to respond to our Cram, but we do have another one just sitting on the bench waiting for it. We then go into Glamora and Arezu the rest of the Glamoras out of the deck so that we can not draw into them and draw into other resources, and we respond with a Spit Innocently to take the knockout. And from here, we do have access to Nest Ball plus Super Rod, so we could grab Cramorant out of the discard pile and put it on the field, or we could grab Sneasler and knock out the Sableye if it starts to become live, or just point blank knock out the Comfy. From here, our opponent uses Flower Selecting and manages to hit the Chorus finally by their turn 3. Gets rid of a Battle Pass and a Beach Court, so that they're going to be able to retreat and do more shenanigans with Comfey. But it looks like they just go Beach Court, retreat, and a Manaphy. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, I got Nest Ball for Sneasler and a boss to take out their only draw option here. So if they don't have anything in this big hand, I am just going to bring up the Comfey, take it out with Poison Petals, and see what they can do. And we get down a Tree Hill from that, so it's like, okay, our opponent BM'd a little bit. They were like, man, I can't believe he just had it like that. Our opponent uses boss's orders to potentially hope that I don't have an energy, which I didn't, but top decking the energy just kind of got us there. We went Dynatree Hill and boss up Sableye, and then they ended up conceding. And in this game, I wanted to share you multiple games, because that last one wasn't really a full game. But here, I'm not quite sure what we're playing against just by the opening of Drapion, but we opened up double Nest Ball plus Glimmet. So from here, I just opened up with an Iono because I gave them like 2 or 3 mulligans, regardless of them passing. You never know if they have a supporter card in hand. I end up going with the Iono, benching the Cramorant, and then using Ascension to immediately evolve into a Glamora. From here, our hand doesn't look the best, but we do have 2 gears to potentially find other supporter cards. And from here, our opponent uses Trekking Shoes, ends up nabbing, I assume the Bidoof was the draw off of there, but I could be wrong. But the Irido ended up getting into their hand from the Iono, which gets them Palkia plus Energy Search, which Energy Search is really peculiar, seeing how Chien-Pao really is the way to find energy, but it helps them here. It helps them here. And then they bench a Squirtle, which I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, this is fine, but you're not going to Greninja me because I top deck the Manaphy. So I end up Pokégearing here. I'm debating between Arezu and Iono, but I'm like, you know what? I really would prefer Iono here. And our hand is just okay. It's 2 stadiums, 2 bosses, and a Colress. We didn't end up hitting the Sneasler to make the math in our favor to knock out the Drapion going back into our turn. Regardless if it was coming back into our turn or not, you would heavily prefer it to be knocked out going into your opponent's turn. But seeing how they grabbed Switch off of Irida, I had low expectations of the Drapion even getting out of there. The Star Portal was probably going to happen because they had a bunch of resources just sitting there. Energy searched for the water energy, which again, multiple energy searches is extremely peculiar, and then they ended up using Nest Stash. Nest Stash is the ability of Squirtle where it shoves your entire hand on the bottom of your deck, and then you draw 1 card, and then you'd be barreled. And then they just ended up passing. Because I thought I recalled them grabbing Switch, but I was like, that was kind of whatever. And from here, I was like, you know what, off this course, I don't need the energy. I would prefer the other 3 draw supporters. Because yes, I do play a ton of them, but you want to draw them consistently over and over and over. And from here, if our opponent does not find a switching card, because they just ended up putting it at the bottom of the deck, they're not going to be able to switch the Drapion out of the active position, unless they even go into the Drapion VSTAR, which I highly doubt they play. But they end up using Melanie to put the energy onto the Palkia VSTAR attached to the Greninja along with a Choice Belt. Choice Belt will not help them in this matchup whatsoever. We don't play any 2-prizers. They go Nest Stash after already using B-Barrel, I believe. No, that's the down arrow for Dynatree Hill. I think I got tripped up on that during the game too. I was like, I see a down arrow, I don't know why. So they end up using Trekking Shoes and grabbing the card, and then they just end up passing, which knocks out the Drapion, which gives us a free turn to tickle whatever comes up at the active spot. And here I'm hoping they put up the Palkia. Because the Palkia isn't the correct answer in my opinion. I feel like it's a Greninja, because Greninja's not doing anything, and they stick with the Squirtle, which I'm okay with. I end up going Nest Ball with the Sneasler, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, should I just boss the Palkia and damage it, or should I take out the Squirtle? And I'm like, no, I'm taking out this Palkia. Because I have a Colress in hand, so I can just use Spin instantly during the next turn, so I can knock it out with the poison, with the residual poison damage, and they may not have anything going for them. Worst comes to worst, they have Canceling Cologne and Spread 90-90, but they end up going and taking out the Sneasler. Sneasler is kind of a decent hit right now, but as of the current board state, I do have a Cramorant, which would take out the Palkia regardless of the Sneasler's damage. They're going to go with a Hisuian Heavy Ball going into their turn, seeing, what can I load up another attacker? And they end up getting Empoleon. Empoleon, I thought about it. I'm like, it stops Cramorant at most. Glamora still goes through it, and then they just end up using Star Portal onto the Empoleon, which was kind of crazy to me how they just didn't retreat and start swinging with the Empoleon, but it was okay. We ended up flipping Tails. Oh, no, we didn't. They knocked out Sneasler. I just Super Rodded the Sneasler right back, Colress into the Sneasler, and I'm like, you know what? I don't really need any of these other resources. Getting the fighting is fine. Getting another Cram down is fine, because what this allows us to do is take out Squovit and just have another backup attacker in general. Our fourth Glamora ended up hitting the Lost Zone with that last chorus, so I'm like, you know what? Cramorant's fine. And then they opened up a 2-prize window of opportunity by benching the Palkia. Had they not, probably wouldn't be possible to win as fast, but we still had it. From here, I use Arezu just to get it out of the hand. I didn't really need Colress. I didn't really want to use Boss. I didn't really want to use Bruno, because using Iono and Bruno would get out of my 2 bosses, and my mindset was, okay, go Boss Spit innocently, Boss Spit innocently. But at the same token, I was like, if literally they just evolved, that kind of ruined the whole strategy. So I just thought, I'm just going to chip away at this Empoleon, and if they attack, then they just lose. From here, I flip Tails on Glamora. The damage goes up onto Empoleon to 16, and I didn't register it right away that I ended up having game, so I was just kind of like preparing for the worst. And then I think it clicked after I used Chorus, and I was like, no, it was after the Glimmet, because I like looked at the damage, and I was like, oh, wait, I just passed. They attacked when I already used Glamora last turn. So, very, very interesting deck, very, very fun, and very high risk, high reward.
I thank everyone for watching. Please subscribe and like for more content. If you'd like to see decks like these, post them in the comment section below what you would like to see next in the oncoming weeks for NAIC. Till then, see everyone later.